Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Woking Council Planning Committee of the 14th of October. We have a full agenda tonight. I'll just go through a few housekeeping matters first, if I may. You'll see that the Planning Committee members are using a speaker system, so can you all hear us okay at the back? Yep, see people nodding. Should the system start to falter or anything, please feel free to wave and we'll see. Generally it's pretty reliable. As you would have noticed, tonight's proceedings are filmed and this information will be up on the Woking Borough Council website in due course. And you'll see from the camera position that it's just members of the Planning Committee and those who come to speak who are filmed. The Planning Committee is made up of 9 elected members, borough councillors, and we're supported and advised this evening by a variety of professional council officers. And if I could just introduce the key officers. On my far right is Mary Severin, who's the borough solicitor, who's here to advise us on any legal matters. Next to her is Colma Karlonig, who's the clerk to tonight's meeting. He's from the Democratic Services Officer. And on my immediate right is Tim Holton, who's Vice Chairman of the committee. I'm Simon Weeks, Chair of the committee. On my left is Mark Cupid, who's the Delivery Programme Director. And next to him is Chris Easton, who's the Service Manager for Highway Development. And the planning officers who will be presenting individual items tonight are sat on the left. And the other people sitting on the 2 arms of this are the remaining members of the Planning Committee. As I said, the Planning Committee is 9 members and all are present tonight. Now, if I could just ensure people understand the process, the Planning Committee is quasi-judicial and we have formal set procedures and conduct. Firstly, the Planning Officer will present the application. Then I will call in turn only those people who are pre-registered to speak. And if you come forward to use the table here and press the grey button on the base unit of the microphone, you'll be able to hear you speaking. The time limit is normally 3 minutes, and it's 3 minutes on all applications tonight, except the first application when we are allowing an additional 3 minutes, so a total of 6 minutes for each category of speaker, and that is because those of you who've seen the agenda will realise it's a very large item. It's for 15, potentially up to 1,500 houses, and it's a major strategic development location for the council, and we've allowed additional time for each of the other strategic location applications. Okay, please do get your key messages across in your allocated time, because we will not allow you to speak beyond your agreed time. And as I say, I must stress that it's only those who are pre-registered to speak, and other people are not requested not to interrupt or add comments, which is contrary to procedure. Following the presentations then and listening to each of your comments, the Planning Committee will then debate and consider the points raised, debate the content of the report, and will hopefully try and reach a decision on each and every one of these that are here tonight. And just finally a reminder that as the local planning authority, our role is to determine valid planning applications. Our role is not to start suggesting alternative schemes or tweaks to schemes. Schemes are presented, we have to determine the advice from the professional planning officers whether those schemes meet local and national planning policy. Okay. So I think with that we'll move straight on to the main item of the agenda. We have no apologies, because all members are here. Members, you've cited the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I sign those as a true record? Are there any changes or modifications? I see no one indicating, so I will sign those. And are there any items to be deferred or withdrawn? None. Okay. So we'll move straight on to the first item, which is the last of the strategic development.
Declarations of interest.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. Are there any declarations of interest from members? Do members have any matters they need to declare related to any of the specific applications we're considering tonight? There are none. Could that be recorded, please? Thank you, Chris. So we move straight on now to the Hogwood Farm application, which, as I say, is the last of the strategic development locations applications, and that's going to be presented tonight by the planning officer, David Smith. David, straight across.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, as the Chair said, the first application on the agenda is the Holbrook Farm, Shearlands Road from Chatsted planning application. It's an application for the southern half of the Arthurfield Gas and strategic development location. It's for a residential-led development providing up to 1,500 homes, a neighbourhood centre, including a primary school, employment and associated infrastructure. The recommendation is for approval subject to conditions in the Section 106 agreement. The application was originally received back in October 2014. Since that time, we've had very proactive discussions with the applicant to the extent where we received further information and amended drawings in July 2015. Following that, we re-advertised and re-consulted on the planning application, and as part of the process that we've been through as a local planning authority, we've commissioned AECOM to independently verify the environmental statement and provide further work on mapping site constraints and dwelling mixes to enable us as officers to be confident in the recommendation that we're making here tonight. And I'll just remind you that there was a member's site visit and technical briefing held on the 20th of September. In terms of the overarching development plan policy, we have a supportive planning policy framework. The site is an allocated site within the development plan for across the SDL for delivery of around 3,500 dwellings across the plan period and associated infrastructure. In that context, the Council has already approved outline planning permission for the northern part of the SDL, the ADLC planning application, and that included provisions for up to 2,000 dwellings, a district centre, a neighbourhood centre, a secondary school, a primary school, and associated infrastructure, including a suitable alternative natural green space, the SANG. The committee approved that in March of this year. There's a master plan up here of the site that will come forward over the coming period. It is for the northern half of the SDL, and as part of the consideration for that planning application, the timings of the applications allowed us as officers and the council to consider the extent of the SDL impacts and the extent of the cumulative impacts of both SDL developments, and on that basis comprise a comprehensive infrastructure delivery plan across the developments for which both of the developers have signed up to. And for all intents and purposes, that was agreed by the council when it considered the ADLC planning permission, and the apportionment of that infrastructure delivery for the ADLC was secured under their Section 106 agreement. So the current planning application will complete the infrastructure delivery plan as has been previously accepted through on-site provision, through Section 106 agreement, and through SIL contributions. So moving on to the actual development proposals themselves, it is a predominantly greenfield site except for the Holtwood Farm Industrial Estate. We have a planning application which is a hybrid planning application, including who are seeking full planning permission for the SANG, the suitable alternative natural green space, and outline planning permission for all other aspects of the development, which includes up to 1,500 dwellings, up to 1,200 square metres of employment floor space, a neighbourhood centre inclusive of the primary school, new sports pitches and associated pavilion building, highways infrastructure and associated landscaping. Now, in terms of the outline planning permission element of the scheme, all matters are reserved. So detailed matters of access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale are all reserved for future consideration and not for consideration in front of us here tonight. The development itself is based around the delivery of the 9 Mile Ride extension, which is a dotted line going from east of the site up to the north of the site, and the central green spine, which provides good linkage into the recently approved scheme for the AGLC part of the site. Either side of the green spine will be located the primary school and the neighbourhood centre. To the south of the green spine, it will feed into the SANG, which is located in the southwest of the site. And the playing fields and allotments and green spaces of the development are proposed to the south-east of the site. The development proposes an average density across the site of 35 dwellings per hectare. The densities themselves and the heights of the buildings are the greatest central within the site, and then they reduce downwards towards the edges. And as part of the application submissions, the applicant has in their design and access statement provided indicative details of how that framework may be brought forward. These character areas they've identified in the employment area, which is located in the purple on this plan. The village core, which is the central orange area, the village residential area, which is the yellow character area, and the village edge, which is the green area towards the south and the west of the boundaries. These are referred to more in the officer report, and you'll see from the figure in the bottom left of this image that those character areas are broadly in compliance with the character typologies set out within the adopted SPD for the area, which introduced the need for this rural interface along the south and the west boundaries of the SDL, of the built development of the SDL. In terms of flooding and surface water drainage, there's no fluvial flooding at the site, so we're only dealing with surface water drainage management. The application submissions confirm that runoff rates will be restricted to greenfield site rates, which is the existing. This is a greenfield site, predominantly after all. And volumes will be managed through the use of sustainable urban drainage systems, so as not to increase flood risk of the site. Further details of that will be brought forward as part of the reserve matters planning applications. There will be enough space on the site to provide sufficient storage capacity to attenuate water runoff up to the 1 in 100 year plus climate change storms, so the very worst storm events. And a gramping condition is proposed to secure an overarching surface water drainage scheme for the site, and that's included in Appendix A. And importantly, the Environment Agency and WSP on behalf of Wokingham as lead flood authority have supported this approach. So the site itself, as I said, is proposing planning permission for the southern part of the SDL, but this links in well with what we know is coming forward on the northern part of the SDL, particularly the strong linkage between those developments through the 9 Mile Wide extension and the strong green spine, which will link Sangs in the southern part of the SDL to up through the neighbourhood centre of the Hopwood Farm application, and then on into the district centre and secondary school of the AGLC site and beyond. The preferred spatial framework strategy of the SPD, or master plan for the SPD, is included on the right here. There are certain elements that vary from that preferred strategy, such as the incorporation of the central green spine and the reduction in employment area. These points are covered in the report in more detail. But those variances aren't considered materially harmful to the development as it's coming forward. As I said earlier, the SANG is being applied for in full. The SANG does form part of the overall SANG for the SDL and the provisions that are being provided under the AGLC planning application. So the SANG for the Hopwood Farm application is 29 hectares in area. 9.7 hectares in area, and that will in time link into the SANG for the AGLC application on the southern part of the SDL, forming a southern SANG of 54 hectares, and when that's incorporated with the further SANG provided for the AGLC site, there'll be an overall provision of SANG of 68 hectares, and those SANGs have been sized in accordance with Natural England requirements. So the development itself is being delivered over the plan period, so there will be an element of phasing to the development. As part of that phasing, the 9 Mile Wide, the primary school And the playing fields become the responsibility of Wokingham to deliver and the SIL. We as a local authority will need to make sure that those are brought forward in a timely manner to serve the development. So in conclusion, this is a sustainable development that calls with the development plan and links well into an SDL-wide infrastructure delivery plan. Since initial submission, officers have done significant work, including commissioning ACON to facilitate this positive recommendation. And a raft of conditions and Section 106 obligations are recommended, which will, in combination with SIL, mitigate the impacts of the development and appropriately dictate the form and nature of the development as it is progressed through the reserve matters applications. So that concludes the presentation. Just before you commence discussions or further representations, I'll bring your attention to the members' updates. There are 3 items on there. The first refers to the recommendation A on page 14, and we advise that we need not revise the description of development as the matter can be dealt with by condition. The second point updates the back condition, and the third point just identifies that Eversley Council have provided further representations reiterating their objections to the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. So we now come on to those registered to speak, and we have Suzanne Sash, Rachel Stockton and Nicola Greenwood. You've got 6 minutes. Have you agreed between you how you're going to subdivide your time? Yes. Okay, well, whoever would like to go first, please come and speak.
I'm having 3 minutes, so could you tell me...
We're happy to let you know, Suzanne.
You might have to gag me. I've been parish councillor and parish councillor and also parent governor, and I'm passionate about the area that I live in. And when I looked at the public responses, 87% of the objections related to the increase in traffic and congestion. And all the issues that I've already sent to the planning committee members are all aimed at trying to improve the development for existing and new residents. So I was going to start with the traffic issues first, as that's sort of greatest concern with the residents. This development is the biggest SDL. It's 3,500 houses, as you know. I know we're only considering the 1.5 at the moment. And it's bigger than Jennings Park. And really what I'm asking for is better solutions for coping with the traffic. I think that things have moved on. I know my daughters, for instance, their first port of call for going to work is public transport. And I just feel that this area, if we're going to become more urbanised, we need to get much better transport, sort of things like quick buses to Reading, quick buses to Wokingham, much better train service into London. It takes probably longer to get to London than it does get to Birmingham, for instance. From here, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And as I say, I think that so much more could be done. And so I'm really asking, I'm questioning whether it's sustainable at the moment with the transport proposals as they are. I know you've got greenways and other, but I don't see that is really going to be a solution for people trying to get to work. Also, you've got the trip rate of 0.5, which quite frankly, I and other residents just really don't believe. So I'm asking John in particular, but also other members of the planning committee to keep pushing for better transport solutions. The other thing I'm concerned about is California Crossroads. I'm concerned that the 9 Mile Ride extension, that's one of the main exit routes to come out of the development, and that's going to hit straight forward to California Crossroads. And so what I would like to see is some sort of timetable so that you don't just build the 9 Mile Ride extension without actually having a workable scheme in place at that time, so that the two can be combined. And I think the third area of concern I have about 9 Mile Ride extension is the fact how it just comes straight into 9 Mile ride. I think that we already had problems with speeding. I know you're going to try and reduce the speed rate to 30 miles an hour. But I don't know whether you approve this now and that means that junction is set, or whether when the 9 Mile ride extension comes in, you can look at that junction again. But I think it is a real safety issue. So that's those three. I have got a slide that needs to come up for another issue which I'm concerned about.
You've got 10 seconds left. So.
Oh God. Okay, I'm concerned that this doesn't comply with the planning policies. I'm worried about the way that the development has been pushed out to make way for this greenway, and that it's, as I say, it doesn't comply with the NDD.
I think that was included in the notes.
It was included in the notes, but I did have the. Where's my slides have gone? Somebody was going to do me some slides.
They're on the laptop.
If we could just finish, if we can locate the slide and just finish off with the slide.
So that's the density, that's the original density there, where we had much greater density in the centre and lower density further out, and that is the new, that's the new density. You've got medium density right on the edge of the development. You're going to come all the way down Park Lane. It's all going to be countryside, and then you're going to hit these houses right on the edge of the development. So again, I would like interested in the views of the planning committee as to whether it complies with the policies.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. And Rachel Scott.
Is this all the
If the red light is on, yes, you're live.
Okay. So I'd just like.
Are you going to take? Are you allowing some time for the third?
Yeah. Can you time me for 2 minutes, please?
2 minutes, thank you.
So I'm a resident in the local parish, and my concerns is around the water surface and the water retention area. I'd like to propose a number of questions to the panel relating to the drainage and sewage on this proposal. Of the 110 acres, to me it looks as if 55 hectares are being developed, which is an awful considerable amount considering it is a greenfield site. The greenfield site is already recognised as being a water retention area, and that's recognised within the reports that you've issued. On the waterways, what I'm interested in is where is the drainage and surface water from sustainable drainage systems going to be routed to from the development site? Where does the current site drainage to the network of local drains go? Is this being utilised in future plans? Has there been any analysis done to estimate on how much surface water, sewage, etc. this development is going to create versus current system? How much of the surface water from the development is due to be routed to the Blackwater River, if any? It's not clear. Has an assessment been carried out for houses upstream and downstream along the Blackwater River, and what impact of the proposed routing will have on their properties? We already live in a flood zone 3. Our property has never been flooded by the Blackwater River, and we would like certainty that as a result of the development, it will never be flooded either. What impact will the routing to the Blackwater River have on the River Loddon? Are you working in conjunction with the new road development in Shinfield? Since the work in Shinfield started, the waterways has already been strained due to a different procedure being exercised to prevent flooding of the surrounding fields where the new road is being developed. This impacts the Blackwater River water levels dramatically, and our garden's already seen a rise in flooding. Surface water. Are you aware that the pumping station at the Rise and Park Lane are not man enough to deal with the current volumes of surface water? Are there any plans to upgrade the pumping stations at both of these sites? Is there any plans to upgrade the sewer system along the A327? We have an independent inquiry from Thames Water that suggests that it is not man enough. I can provide that.
Could I ask you to wrap up now, please?
Yeah. We all have non-return valves fitted upstream because of this. My daughter suffered Giardia, which is South American waterborne disease, when she was age 4 as a result of the sewage issues in this area. If the properties begin to flood as a result of this development, we will be looking at working with council to take responsibility as a result of this development.
Please summarise now, because you've had your time. Okay, thank you very much. Nicola Greenwood.
Just a minute, thank you. Firstly, the British Horse Society confirms there are approximately 610 horse owners registered within the RG40 postcode. Currently, only 10% of the rights-of-way in Wokingham is bridleway, a figure well below the national average of 22%. Matt Davey, Head of Highways, has confirmed it is WBC intention to include horse riders in the Greenway scheme. Crest Nicholson showed one of these greenways as a cycleway running south through the Hogwood development from Finchampstead Byway 22 to footpath 28 at West Court, also linking to Park Lane. However, the Marino family representatives have yet to acknowledge this route and include it on their plans. Secondly, the area plan to allow space for horse riders to cross the new 9 Mile Ride extension is much appreciated. However, this road is likely to carry a significant amount of traffic. To enable safe crossing for all users, including children walking and cycling to New School, a Pegasus crossing here is essential. I cannot stress enough how important it is to local horse riders that more safe off-road routes are made available for them to use. If this application is approved, please make it a condition of approval that the Pegasus crossing and the new Greenway route are included and allow use by horse riders as well as cyclists. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that. Now could I ask Roger Marshall say from Finchampstead Parish Council to speak? Roger, you want 3 minutes?
3 minutes to the outline. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Finchampstead Parish Council Planning Committee spent quite a lot of time, as you'd expect, looking at this application because it's predominantly actually in Finchampstead Parish in the southern part. And we came to the conclusion that this was a development that was necessary, bearing in mind that the Woking Borough Council has got to meet its 5-year plan for housing, and if it doesn't, then builders will be given pretty much carte blanche to build where they like. So we looked at this from the point of view of improving and looking at detail of the application rather than looking at ways that we might ask for it to be rejected. I mean, we had severe concerns about the fact that it was being built on a greenfield site, that traffic implications are fairly severe. And I speak from that personally because I live just off 9 Mile Ride, and I've got to think what 9 Mile Ride is going to be like when both of these developments down in Isle of Field are complete. But we submitted a number of points, and pleased to say that quite a number of these have been addressed in the officer's report. For example, we felt it was necessary for adequate broadband to be provided, given this is an area where it's likely to be inhabited by a lot of people from the high-tech industry. We thought broadband was essential to be there right from day one. And I see that one of the requirements, condition has been put in that broadband trunking should be included. We had concerns about access to the Sands, but I think this is a reserved matter and can be probably dealt with later. We had concerns about flooding, as the previous speaker has said, and we also were not happy with the overall provision, we think, for bridleways, again as an earlier speaker has mentioned. But one area which we did have concern about, and which unfortunately hasn't been addressed, is with regard to the 132 kilovolt high tension cables that are bisecting the site. We feel that this is a potential health hazard. There have been various critiques and studies done in the past on the effect of high voltage cables on residents living in close proximity. Although the plan clearly shows that houses will not be built immediately underneath, they are on either side of the road, which I think will actually more or less, or the pathway will go underneath the area concerned. We feel that we recognise that it would be expensive to put those cables underground. We feel the profitability of this overall development would justify putting them underground and make it a safer, more attractive area for people to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, we have Councillor Ian Pitter, who's the Borough Board Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I am one of the 2 ward councillors. Under pressure from the central government, the council has already agreed to take 13,000 houses across the borough. Having included these in the Ardfield SDL element of the core housing strategy, which was examined in public by a government inspector and is therefore now a quasi-legal document, it is no longer a case of if, rather when a planning application for houses on the MFT land will be granted. Since the planning application for 2,000 houses in the northern part of the SDL was granted this March, we have now largely moved from S106 to community infrastructure level contributions, but not entirely. This means that MFT will not be responsible for the tricky infrastructure matters, and the housing elements are outlined only at this stage. That really only leaves the sand and sports areas to be considered in detail at this time. Whilst I am disappointed the same does not include access point car park at the southwest corner, I am nevertheless very pleased to see that this area and the sports pitches added to the same to be provided by the DIO around Westcourt will provide a large recreational area both for those who live in the SDL and the residents of Finch Hampstead, in which parish all these recreational areas are located. Like others, I am disappointed with the intention to keep the electricity pylons. These will remain an unsightly gash across the housing area and detract from what should be a pleasant residential location. If cables can be buried in national parks, as recently announced, they should surely be buried in residential areas. I would have liked to have seen the cables buried around the edge of Park Lane, where the non-inhabitable area would be reduced by the width of the road, and there would be ease of access. The land freed up would provide some more houses, and the increased selling prices created by removing the pylons should pay for burying the cables. I understand that without burying the cables, it may not be possible to build 1,500 houses on the site. So I hope we may yet see some action. Building the extra houses up to the maximum number currently applied for would seem a small price to pay for removing the unsightly pylons and cables. I'm very pleased that contributions will be made towards road improvements at California Crossroads along White Horse Lane and also at the increasingly dangerous Memorial Junction. These are not simply to cater for additional vehicle movements, but also consist of major safety improvements for pedestrians, cyclists, horse riders, and also drivers. With my Deputy Executive for Children's Services hat on, I also welcome contributions towards the new secondary school and a new primary school, the latter being part of this site. I see no substantive reason for refusing the application, especially since this will probably result in a successful appeal, which would be expensive to the Council and by ratepayers. There's much to commend the application, the sales, the playing fields, the contribution to road improvements in Finch Hampstead. Granting the application at this time would increase the likelihood of good interfaces with the northern part of the SDL and reduce the period of disruption during development across the SDL as a whole. I therefore urge the committee to approve the application. In doing so, I ask for one condition to be made. That MFT create a liaison group of elected representatives, and since the public might not know which contractors, vehicle movements, noise and dust is associated with which developer, the other one being Crest in the north, they be asked to consider merging this group with that run by Crest for the northern part of the SDL. Thank you for following us.
Okay, thank you, Ian. That concludes those registered to speak. I think we'll start by with a number of questions posed. I suggest, members, with your agreement, that we'll get answers to some of the points posed before we start the deliberations. So I think it would be fair to say that the issues fall into 3 main areas. Firstly, one probably for you, Chris, which is going to be about public transport, trip rates and California Crossroads. And then David, if you could fill us in on some of the details of the concerns that, or addressing the concerns expressed about drainage, sewage and the extent to which the site, the portion of the site is developed and the effect on River Blackwater. And then we could also cover the issue about the greenways, the lack of a bridleway route to the south, and also whether we could get clarification on whether greenways could actually be used by horses and so on. So start with you first on the public transport greenways and California Crossroads.
Good evening. Okay, just on public transport, it's worth just setting out, this has been assessed as a public transport strategy that was approved as part of the AGRC planning application, which also forms part of the MFT application that's here in front of us tonight. Through that, we've managed to secure £3.2 million over 10 years And through that delivery, it gives us the ability, it's not the developer delivering it, it's the council delivering it, and therefore it gives us the ability to work with the bus operators. And you'll probably have seen the Leopard, for example, which runs through from Wokingham through Shinfield and down to Arborfield currently. We're currently talking to those bus operators as they know the area and they give us good understanding. There's no guarantee that they will be the bus operator that serves the area in the future because we need to go out to tender, obviously. But there has been some significant benefit as a result of that. And likewise in Shinfield, we've seen a change coming to their public transport strategy as a result of that service that has been vastly improving. So with that, it runs through a couple of phases. The first phase, the buses kind of tend to stay as they are, and as the development builds out, frequency will increase. Now I appreciate obviously a couple of comments we've made. It does make sense to try and get high frequency in early. However, we have to strike a balance and get the buses to be delivered to the site at a reasonable point in time to ensure that we don't obviously spend all the funds up front and then the service doesn't become commercially viable and then doesn't continue on in the future. So we need to kind of make sure that we program it correctly, we build it steadily to encourage people to obviously use it and obviously develop it as things progress. I think moving to the trip rate, I think in terms of the trip rate, we've had this discussion quite a number of times at planning committee. There is a trip rate of 0.53 that has been reviewed and it's in line with, first of all, it's drawn from a database called TRIX, and that's used by over 660 odd companies and local authorities across the country. It's a national database which is obviously well established and well used in the industry, and as such, that's one of the bases that we've obviously used to establish our trip rate. Residents of Arborfield and Shinfield alike have obviously raised concerns in the past, and they've done surveys. Some of the surveys have come out showing a rate actually very similar, some are higher, some are lower, but obviously in terms of the data that we've had that's been submitted and what we've obviously obtained from other developments that have been generated in the past, the rate is a good rate. And in terms of mode shift, just kind of stepping into that slightly, which is trip rates, when we agree on mode shift, we can often reduce the trip rate based on a level of assumptions applied to buses, cycles, and so on and so forth. In terms of this development, we didn't assume any mode split, so therefore we've applied the full trip rate of 0.53. We haven't taken any assumptions for buses, cycles, etc. Therefore, we've used the worst case assessment and not reduced that trip rate lower. So by applying good travel planning measures, we should get a better figure than what obviously the traffic has been assessed at and coming out for. So we've given it the assessment in this application, and the AGRC has been on the worst case figures for traffic. California Crossroads, I think it's written in the report that there is a working group meeting and a number of local residents, businesses and parish councillors sit on that group. So far we've had some public consultation, public meetings, which has brought in some specialists to deal in the kind of delivery for junctions, shared surface, and also traffic, looking at capacities, etc. The group has worked up a vision, it's worked up an agenda and a timetable moving forward, and we've currently got the design brief out to review, where we're looking to appoint a project manager and a design team. So we're currently working, the funding is secured through Section 106, and that will be delivered by the 200th dwelling in both, or each one that comes forward first through MFT and AGRC. Therefore, the funding will be in place for the council to deliver a scheme as it's deemed appropriate and in line with the delivery of non-right extension, which through the delivery now seal, the council will be responsible for delivering in the southern part of this SDO, this application site. I think Greenways was also on the list. The intention is, and that's always been the intention, to have the Greenways as a shared kind of equestrian, stroke cycle, stroke rollerblading, whatever you want to kind of use it for. And I think in the, also with the application that will be coming forward in front of the council soon is the parcel 01 for Arborfield. And to the north of there, there is on Biggs Lane, you can already see examples that are set out where they've separated the footpath cycleway and the equestrian running along Biggs Lane. And that will be the kind of character that continues through onto the Greenways as they expand.
Pegasus Crossing?
Yeah, in terms of the Pegasus Crossing, I don't disagree, horses are kind of slow moving at times, especially when they're crossing the road. There is the design, the council's already set out, and the application sets out the green range through the site. And at the point, the council's delivering the normal road extension to the south, and I think it's something that we will be looking at to deliver, and it will come through the detailed design at that point when we get to the delivery of the road, but I don't see there being an issue in those being worked up in the design.
Okay. David, could you just take us through a bit on the drainage, sewage issues and the drainage routes? We have obviously heard a lot about existing deficiencies of the drainage infrastructure, which are presumably down to the likes of Thames Water to resolve. But obviously, let's not get drawn into those existing issues, which are not what this application is about fixing.
Okay. Well, the whole drainage strategy for the site is to manage the surface water to existing runoff rates. So that will be done through sustainable urban drainage systems. And the intention is that it will store water on site through provisions such as dry retention ponds, swales, other aspects like that. Full details of which and locations of which will be cited in response to the Reserve Matters applications as they come forward. So the intention is, and the application submission set out, that the development will not increase flood risk off-site above existing circumstances. So only conditions 45, 46 and 47 would ensure that that's the case, and the Environment Agency and WSP on behalf of the council have accepted that approach. Similarly, in terms of the effect on the River Blackwater, the Environment Agency have been a consultee on the planning application. They've assessed the application for its impact on river flooding, and again they're satisfied with the approach set out within those conditions, that will suitably manage off-site runoff in a way that will not impact upon the River Blackwater. Thames Water have also been consulted as part of the planning application. Their consultation response is on page 18, but they raised no objection to the application. They acknowledge that there is going to need to be substantial upgrades in the existing sewage and drainage infrastructure, but that will be something that comes forward as part and parcel of the development process. So I think that covers it.
Yeah, I think it's just worth adding, just from my personal knowledge of the area, that there's a large area of gravel workings known as Fleet Hill Farm, which is just to the east, sorry, just to the east of the Tally Ho, and runs through towards Elmsley Cross. That is almost fully worked out now by the gravel company, and the agreement with the Environment Agency and the gravel company is that that land, instead of having material brought in to fill in the pits, the whole area will be restored to a lower level, and therefore it will create significant floodplain capacity, which of course is just upstream of that water from the site that we're discussing now. So that might provide some additional assistance. I think the other thing that would be worth just looking at is the suggestion of a liaison group. As people recall, this was suggested with the AGLC application, and it was embraced by AGLC, and I would be very keen. Mark, is there some way that we could actually require this to happen as opposed to just hoping?
Generally speaking, it's not something we can require, but generally most developers are quite willing to do that, particularly on something, on a development of this scale. I'm fairly sure that when the land is disposed of, as soon as we start talking to the developers that start coming forward, that we will very strongly encourage them to do so. And to pick up on the key themes that have been raised, we are very aware of. We've invested quite a lot of time and effort into investigating the highways and the drainage and the connectivity, particularly here at the equestrian point. So that can be aired through the liaison group and also through the forums that will continue.
Do you think it might be something we could add as an informative to this? Okay. Could you think of some appropriate wording before we come to a point of needing to reach a decision? Thank you. All right, well, of course I'm also a ward member for this, so I get to speak before the rest of you on this one. But I will reserve some points to the end, but I just thought it would be worth considering a couple of issues which I think we mustn't lose sight of, is that historically development in the borough has not come with appropriate infrastructure, and that means, you know, you've got a number of areas of the borough where it is completely, people are very car dependent. People in Finchester are used to being car dependent because there's a very limited existing bus service. One of the advantages, clearly there are disadvantages, as we all recognise, with having additional houses, which means more people, more pressures, more traffic. But it also means that under the council's scheme of infrastructure contributions, that there will be significant contributions made by the developer towards addressing some of those concerns. So I just made a note earlier this afternoon of some of those. That the California Crossroads, I think, is currently scheduled with a £2.3 million spent. The Nine-Mile Ride extension is £6.2 million spent. The Greenaways is just over £4 million spent. £1.2 million on country parks, just short of £1 million on a swimming pool, £800,000 on a library, further £600,000 on public rights of way enhancements, £1.5 million on a sports hall, £3.5 million on pitches and pavilions. That's not the school pitches and pavilions, that's the general public ones. £2.5 million on a community centre. And then obviously in addition to that is the school. So unlike many of the drip type developments that have happened in the borough, where 50 houses are put here and another 50 houses are put there, the cumulative effect gradually builds up. When you have a large scale development like this, we are able to insist on very significant contributions from the developer back into the community to address, if you like, so that they consume their own smoke, so that actually a lot of the facilities will be on hand. And obviously, if you look at the two sites together, that will include things like additional shopping facilities as well. So I just thought it would be worth mentioning that. I'll reserve making other points later. So now we'll go on to speakers. Who have we got first? John, speak first, and then Rochelle, and then...
Thank you, Chairman. I have a number of questions. I don't know whether you would like me to ask them and then you answer them, or I'd ask them all in one lump. First of all, I'd like to make a comment about Commonfield Lane. I'm disappointed that we haven't taken the opportunity to make that, because it is a good route to the school as well. So I would ask the council to give consideration to improving that. We do have SEAL, so we spend the money, so it's on us to do it. The other thing is I'm concerned about park and rides. Park and rides are very important. When this development was actually first mooted, it was said that up to 25% of the people on the site would ride on buses. Well, that's not going to happen unless we can put in some form of bus terminal or mini park and rides. We're seeing mini park and rides pop up all over the borough. They're non-official. It would be a good idea if we could make some of them official. As somebody has just said, it is the biggest SDM that we're building at the moment. The type of roads. I'd like to see a commitment to the type of roads going through the development, that they will be the wide boulevard types of roads, which are easy for buses to pass, and also to have cycleways and paths to keep them separate from the road.
You're talking about the through roads? I'm
talking about the roads, the general through roads that go through, because I think it's very important. No doubt they will all meet our parking standards when it comes to reserved matters. I think the pylons are quite important, that we should, wherever possible, work with developers, because I think that Councillor Piggott said, it's very true that it will improve not only what it looks like, but I'm sure that the developers will be able to deliver more and more luxurious homes by removing them, because I can't see anybody buying an £800,000 house with a pylon in their back garden. They're really just the points that I would like to make.
Okay. So, Chris, do you want to make any comment about Commonfield Lane? I think we can take the width of the roads as agreed, but the Commonfield Lane point and the parking line issue, moving parking line issue.
Commonfield Lane is one that was identified again previously at the AGOC application, and again linked through to this one here because all traffic was assessed as one. The developers did come up with a scheme at that time, but we decided, similar to Barkham Bridge, from talking with members and residents, that it was best to take the funding so we could deliver the improvement that we felt appropriate at that time. And you're correct, we're now in seal, so if there is a bigger pot, then obviously there is availability to maybe consider a different scheme or a bigger scheme. So I think in terms of that one, that's in the council's control to obviously deliver, and there's a trigger on that for the AGLC for the 200 dwelling, and similar on this one through section 106 and seal. In terms of Park and Ride, I know that's something also we've been talking about more and more recently. The district centre in the AGLC application, we are obviously, that's a later phase, and when that comes forward, we'll have the opportunity to discuss that then. But as part of that, there is secured, as part of the condition built into section 106 as well for the AGLC, to secure a public transport interchange. So we'll have something very similar in this location as there is in Shinfield, the Shinfield West application, which will allow for some changing between the east and the west corridor, which runs on Basingstoke Road, and obviously to ready for the A7. Likewise, in this location, we should, hopefully as things progress, there is the flexibility to deliver a bus through to Bracknell, maybe down to Hampshire, depending on obviously the requirement as we move forward. And then you're correct, the road types, we have a specific road type. It will be a minimum of 6.1 metres wide through the Lama Ride extension, flaring obviously at locations for pedestrian crossings to increase pedestrian crossing areas and give deflection to traffic to make vehicle speeds ensure they're kept at 30 miles an hour. And there'll be footpath cycleways offset behind a tree line verge as well, running alongside both sides of the carriageway.
Well, John stole at least two of my ideas, but I would also like to agree that we do need a park and ride there as something to go forward in the future. I would also say that burying power lines would be a very good idea, because it seems like that's one of the bigger objections from a lot of local people. Lastly, cycle lanes. Now, the cycle lanes, do they actually connect to anything, or is it just for riding around the area there? Will it be able to be used to actually go to something like Mere Oak to be able to catch a bus, or will it be able to go to Wokingham or Reading, or is it just a very pleasant thing around the development and then you don't go any place from there? You have to go on 9 mile ride. Yeah, a big hole in the ground.
Right.
Where they flood everybody and they put the bikes in there too.
Let's get an answer to particularly the cycling point. Yep. So we can park and ride a bit as well. Knowledge as a delay.
Yeah, I mean, basically, there is the Greenway network which will be evolving. Granted, Suzanne made the point that it's not necessarily used for commuting, so they're probably more your leisure routes which you can use kind of off-peak, although some people may wish to also use them to commute to a shorter local distance. It's not
bear in mind there's going to be, if this was to be approved, there's an increment of 250 employment opportunities created.
Yeah, there's intended to be a lot of internalisation, but obviously it's expected that you will get a lot of people leaving, obviously coming to you during the day. In terms of our vision, I was talking about the road, the cycleway, you will go cycle, but there are identified improvements along the Lama Ride, obviously California Cross and beyond. For instance, the Lama Ride extension. The Lama Ride extension will link into existing routes, which obviously can be improved up to Alford Cross and Barkham. But the intention is that it will link into the Alford Cross Relief Road. The Alford Cross Relief Road will link into the A327. We've identified improvements along that section linking into the Eastern Relief Road and obviously into Shinfield. And then through Shinfield there's been a whole raft of cycle improvements which you're probably aware of, as footpath 20, which will extend up to 3 Mile Cross, and then obviously through those developments which can actually get you to Junction 11 to Green Park Station as that comes forward. So it's a bit of a longer distance, not many people are going to really cycle that far on regular occurrence, but it is achievable.
Okay, all right. Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. A couple of general questions, really. First of all, just to clarify, if we agree this outline application, do we hold to ourselves for the reserved matters by anything decision we make tonight? I'm guessing, and I'd like to confirm, that the Pegasus Crossing and Green Routes would be at reserved matter stage discussion. And just to follow up what John said about the power lines, I mean, it must make commercial sense for a developer to bury those, because otherwise they're going to not make as much money as they'd hoped to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chris Singleton.
Thank you, Simon. Couple of questions. One is on buses, the other on the schools. Perhaps on the school first. I'm not sure whether the school would come now or whether that should be left for reserve matters on phasing.
What the delivery?
Well, it's a question of the phasing of the school and how that matches up to the house building programme. Would that come later?
I think you'll find that the school is going to be operational before first houses.
No, perhaps I should explain. I'm concerned the other way. If we've got too much capacity there, are we going to get people flooding in before the houses are built from other areas, and then not have the capacity available for people actually in the development?
We're only proposing, I think, Ian, we're only having single year entry, aren't we?
It's a 2-school entry eventually, but we'll build it and ramp it up. And in fact, we could rely upon the one in the north first, get that full, and then open the one in the south. We have some flexibility about it.
Fine, thank you. The other thing is the question of buses, following on from what John was saying. Whilst obviously it would be nice to have the park and ride, there's the question of the bus service. I was concerned to see that in fact one of the services is a 60-minute frequency, because I think if it starts at 60-minute frequency, there's a danger that the travelling pattern will develop, people will go by car. I'd like to see that increased if we could. I take your point about the economics of it, we can't overdo it, but maybe it should be increased from 60 to 30.
I think one of the key things with this development is that with this being the first of the major schemes that is in the SILS scheme, as you've already heard, a lot of the matters that are of concern are actually going to be the council's responsibility to resolve. And I think that is likely to be more likely to be a more coordinated approach. Developers looking just at one particular site, the council can have a more of an overarching view of things and try and ensure things actually work with other communities.
Fine, thank you.
Right, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is about the moving of condition 9, which is about the limiting the amount of non-residential floor space in the neighbourhood centre that's been moved to the reserve matters stage. And it's more lenient and it allows perhaps that there could be more than 500 square metres, as long as there's no effect on adverse effect on other retail centres. Will there be an independent assessment available at that stage, so that we can be sure that there's no adverse effect on working town, for example?
Mark, I mean that's a particularly significant point, that. Clearly we are saying in here the applicant is seeking a larger area. We are actually, if we are to agree this tonight, we are only permitting 500 square metres. And it will then be in the applicant's court to prove that anything more than 500 square metres would need to be clearly established as not having a detrimental effect. Could you elaborate a little?
I think you've just about covered it. Effectively with the reserve matters application, the onus would be on the applicant to demonstrate that there was no adverse impact, and obviously it would come back to this committee and we wouldn't be recommending it unless there was a good case made to say that there was no harm caused.
I think what Chris was looking for was something that was of an independent nature, because obviously when things are, basically if you pay the bill, it can influence the outcome if you're realistic. So what do we do to ensure that that is something that's subject to decent level of scrutiny?
Yeah, generally speaking, on something like that, we'd engage our own consultant to corroborate the evidence put forward by the applicant, as we are doing with ACON, with the size of the site and the plot densities.
So that address your concern?
Well, it appears to be semi-independent.
Okay. Michelle?
Actually, I would probably disagree. I think the larger centre might be better. But I don't think anybody there is actually going to come to Woking. I think more than likely they'll be going to Reading. So the only thing this is going to do is cut down people going to Reading rather than cutting down people going to Woking.
Well, I think as local ward member, I'll disagree with you. I know where I go shopping and I know where a lot of my neighbours go shopping.
Yes, but Mr. Renewal was going to go into Bracknell rather than out here.
In fact, an awful lot of my shopping done on the computer now. But anyway. Right, members, are there any other areas that you'd like to cover off with this? Have you thought of some wording with regard to informative marketing? Something you would consider?
Yeah, Chairman, something quite simple, just advising any future developers to set up a liaison group for the SDL in cooperation with CREST.
Okay. Members, is that something you would be willing to support as an additional informative or what's included already in the report? Okay, good. Okay, well, to summarise then, as I said earlier, this is the last of the SDL applications. So, well, there's some stuff work is already underway to this. I think as these applications have come forward, the council has understood them increasingly well, and I think that means that applications as are happening now are probably potentially of an even higher standard than those that were considered in the early stage of the SDL requirements. I think we've got an application here that clearly is able to accommodate, I think it's up to 1,460 houses, as it's currently proposed. If it is to be approved tonight, it is likely that reserve matters applications will come in over the intervening years, and each of those will have to be considered on its own merit, and it's currently planned that all reserve matters applications for any significant level housing for all the SDLs still come back to this planning committee as it stands. So we get another opportunity to look at those. We've also got to, let's not lose sight of the fact that there have been numerous public meetings and a significant level of consultation on this. I think it's interesting to note that the initial application for this site, which I think was made in November last year, produced about 180 objections and a further 45 or 50 letters of comment. There was further revisions to the scheme. Further details were sent out again, and the second time around that produced 4 objections. The other thing let's not lose sight of is that because of the scale of these schemes, Mark, I'm sure I've got my facts correct, but I'm looking for you to reassure me on this, that we wrote to every household in Arborfield, Barkham, Finchipson South and Swallowfield about these. Both the first application, so it's about 10,000, I think. And then the subsequent revised application, they also had details of this provided. So there's been a considerable period of consultation on this, and I would challenge anybody in the room to say that the proposal that we have in front of us isn't an improvement upon the initial proposal. Just the sheer passage of time means that things are tweaked, adjustments are made. We seem to have an application here that, unless I'm misreading the committee, is probably getting its support tonight. So there's no other members who are indicating they wish to speak.
Jimmy?
Yes, another member is indicating.
Yeah, sorry, and for the record, could we have some idea of what percentage of this development is actually going to be green lane?
David, could you give us that, please? Just there's either 49 or 51%.
Yeah, so of the 109 hectare sites, 58 hectares are going to be green infrastructure, so approximately 50%.
Okay. So any other members wish to make any final comments before this to the vote?
I'll leave the archaeology to reserve matters.
Sorry?
I'll leave archaeology to reserve matters.
As I say, what we're agreeing now is the principle, and we'll see reserve matters coming forward in pockets. And I think being realistic, that's probably going to spread over the next 15 or more years, because no developer goes to build a sudden flurry of buildings because it doesn't sell them. So, members, you have a clear recommendation in front of you. There's been significant debate about it, and this is really a culmination of a lot of the previous consultations. The only change other than that detailed in the members' update is the introduction of an informative, encouraging the developer to work with Crest Nicholson and local residents and representatives in forming a liaison group, which I think will ensure that the inevitable hiccups that would occur in the early stage of any development can be addressed and ironed out, so that as the development progresses in coming years, things run as smoothly as possible and impact existing residents to the minimum. So, members, would you please indicate whether you're prepared to accept the officer's recommendation to approve? And that is a unanimous decision. Thank you, members. That is approved. Could I ask those members, the public who are here just for that, to leave, unless they wish to stay for the rest of the committee, then we'll get on with the other items. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, the remaining members of the public, for your forbearance. That was a very big application, so we had to give it appropriate consideration and time. We're now moving on to an application at the Sanford Farm site. Members will be very familiar with the Sanford Farm site because we made previous site visits there. So, straight across to you, Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an outline application for up to 21 dwellings on the site with all matters reserved. The site is in a major development location and close to existing residential development in Woodley. It is accessed from Perimeter Road but from the east rather than the west. The Sanford Farm development for over 400 houses is immediately adjacent. This is an aerial view of the site, and you can see the spur of Perimeter Road on the right. There is currently no access through to Perimeter Road on the left from the site. The main offices form a central courtyard, and there are two further offices adjacent to the road, all of which are single storey. The site is mainly gravel, but there is an area of grass to the north and the west. Members will have seen the site before, but just to illustrate the offices from the ground, as well as the tree line to the west in the top picture. You can also see the proximity of the adjacent housing development in the top left picture again to the left. This is the indicative master plan for the site, showing 21 units comprising of 11 dwellings and a block of 10 flats. Access would be from Main Street to the east and would follow a simple T-junction within the site. Parking is indicated on driveways and on the edge of the street, and amenity space would be to the rear of the dwellings. It's important to note that the application is outlined with all matters reserved, so it's a question of whether the indicated layout demonstrates that 21 units can be accommodated. In terms of the main issues, the proposal would result in the loss of the existing offices and therefore the loss of B1 use floor space. However, the offices are not in high demand, with some of them being vacant for a number of years. The applicant has demonstrated that sufficient marketing has taken place, and some weight should also be attributed to the fact the offices could be converted to residential units through permitted development. Overall, it is considered the loss of the offices is acceptable. In terms of character, as stated, the main issue is whether 21 units can be accommodated on the site. The indicative layout achieves all relevant standards and is acceptable in this respect. Due to its proximity to the Sanford Farm development, however, it needs to reflect the design characteristics of this site. This is a plan to show the site itself within how it fits into the Sanford Farm development. Although all matters are reserved and design and layout will be considered in detail at a later stage, basically it's just to show how this can fit into the Sanford Farm development as a whole. The block of flats to the bottom of the site shows how, provides a focal point to focal point similar to Sanford Farm, and also surveillance of the amenity space in the adjacent development. The dwellings to the east of the site would be accessed from the road, as well as having garages set back, much like the adjacent development, and the dwellings overall are of a similar scale. As stated in the report, subject to conditions, no harmful impact is identified in terms of residential amenity, ecology, trees, sustainability and drainage. In the members' update, there are some changes to some of the conditions. We received some additional information regarding contamination and therefore Environmental Health have recommended that condition 7 be changed to what's in the members' update. They've also recommended an additional condition regarding landfill gas. Condition 16 needs to be altered to read scale to be designed to 2-storey level for the dwellings and 3-storey level for the apartments. And a couple of changes to the report. The history of the South Farm development is outlined in the members' update. In the consultation responses, I've incorrectly referred to Woodley Town Council as a parish council. And on page 135 of the agenda, paragraph 32, relating to affordable housing, since the report went to print, it's been agreed that 6 affordable units will be provided on site, with the remaining 0.3 units provided by Community Sun, and this has been agreed with the Economic Sustainability team. In terms of further clarification, the parking provision on the indicative plan is in requirement with our parking standards study, and this has been confirmed by the highways officer. In terms of density, it is acknowledged that the density of the proposal is quite high. However, this is primarily because of the block of flats. The plan there will show that to the south, the open space is there, and when you take that into account, the 55 dwellings per hectare for the site isn't going to show that the buildings will be quite a huge mass on the site. It's actually going to be relatively open, particularly because of that open space to the south. Also, a point on the impact on schools. The strategic planning for school spaces is outside the scope of this planning application. However, impact on local infrastructure is relevant, but will be mitigated through financial contributions in terms of the SIL. However, for this application, we would not be asking for SIL. It would be collected on the approval of the last reserve matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Graham. I just have one registered speaker. Which, do we have Hannah Bowler?
Yeah.
Oh, you're step ahead of me. So you've got 3 minutes on this application, and so we're just interested in the quality necessary rather than necessarily the quantity.
Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Hannah Bowler from Barton. I speak on behalf of Harriet Cognitive, the applicant. As officers already confirmed, the proposal seeks outline planning permission for up to 21 dwellings with associated parking, amenity space, landscaping and access at Sanford Farm Woodley. All matters are reserved. A key consideration developing the proposals has been the relationship of the site with the wider Loddon Park residential development, which was granted permission in 2012 and is currently under construction. The principal development within this development is in accordance with the adopted core strategy, given it is within a major development location, the settlement boundary of Woodley, and will make effective use of a previously developed site in a sustainable location. The site is currently occupied by 5 barn-style offices providing 6 office suites. The applicant currently occupies 1 suite, with the remaining vacant. The vacant offices have been marketed, albeit with limited occupier interest, since 2004, as set out within the office market report. The report concludes that there is no reasonable prospect of the level of interest changing in the future, and as such, residential development is considered an appropriate alternative given the surrounding residential context of the area. It should also be noted that the site existing buildings can be changed from office to residential through permitted development rights. However, the applicant has chosen to pursue the redevelopment of the site to residential to provide a higher quality development that can seamlessly integrate within the Loddon Park development than it could be achieved through the permitted development route. The delivery of up to 21 residential units within this sustainable location will not only optimise use of previously developed land in line with the NPPF, but also contribute to meeting the market and affordable housing needs of the borough. With regard to design, whilst matters pertaining to appearance and layout will be the subject of a reserve matters application, the application provides a set of design principles underpinning the application master plan for the site to deliver a high quality development. These include local character, the layout, building heights and housing mix of Loddon Park, and the council adopted design and parking standards. With regard to landscaping specifically, the proposal would incorporate appropriate land planting and landscaping with prime community space and opportunity to utilise the open space provision within Loddon Park development, especially along the southern boundary of the site as demonstrated on your officer's drawing. The site will be accessed via Loddon Park development with an opportunity to connect to the new pedestrian links to the south, providing access to Perimeter Road. The proposals demonstrate that there are opportunities for the site to be served by the new thoroughfare via T-junction arrangement with a negligible impact on the surrounding road network as demonstrated through the supporting transport statement. Further details relating to access specifically would be subject to a reserve matters application. A range of supporting documents have been submitted to support the proposals in relation to flood risk, drainage, utilities, archaeology and ecology. Officers have been satisfied with the contents of these reports and the associated mitigation strategies, with additional ecology and archaeology surveys secured by condition prior to commencing development on site. We fully support your officer's recommendation to approve this application and consider that the proposed development is fully in accordance with the principles laid down in the borough's adopted development plan and the NPPF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have a board member here to speak on that, so we'll move straight on with this. I've got a few questions I'm going to start off with. Graham, we'll do them one at a time, but obviously, historically, this site, there were a lot of contamination issues. Are we satisfied that the responses we've got will be ensuring that those issues will be properly addressed and any material that's hauled away will be appropriately treated and covered and everything else?
Yeah, as you'll see in the update, the condition of environmental health is quite substantive, and certainly that would make sure that everything's fine.
Okay, all right. I recall from the site, my perception is that these low-rise sort of rural-style dwellings that are there, no, buildings that are there, they are quite close to the houses in Perimeter Road, some of the rear gardens. We were quite satisfied that we, particularly because the road comes at an angle, we're definitely fine in terms of back-to-back distances and so on. Does it meet our guidelines or anything?
Yes, it does meet the guidelines, and there's also quite a strong vegetation barrier between the two as well, which will be maintained.
Okay, all right. And how well do you think it integrates with the rest of the new development? It's obviously, in a way, it's a bit of an afterthought, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, slightly just the way of things, but I think it does work quite well with the development. As I say, the block of flats at the bottom of the site provides quite a focal point and would be, again, 3 stories to mimic the block of flats on the opposite side of the road. Again, moving up to the side, the dwellings again just reflect what's on the opposite side of the road, so I think it would work quite well with the adjacent development.
Okay. My last question is probably a very unreasonable one, but I'll ask it anyway. The density is high at 55, but obviously if we're looking at it in the entirety of the site, clearly the rest of the site is a lower density. Do we have any feel for what the whole site density would be if you include this element of 55 within the rest that's already been approved?
I wouldn't want to hazard a guess as the exact figure in terms of the whole site. I would say density is one element in terms of looking at the impact of it as a whole. Again, it is primarily because of the fact that there are flats that it pushes up and it's on a small site. I think as you can see from the plan, it is a very similar kind of scale and size to what's already been approved adjacent. So ultimately, I don't think it's a huge amount of mass on the ground when you actually look at it.
Okay, thank you. John, to you first.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the fact that the developer has decided to submit a planning application rather than going down the PD route. I think that's very cool. But the other thing is, I would just like to say I'm reading the Woodley Town Centre's comments, and they seem to have no objections. So only 2 observations on that.
Okay, Michelle.
I'm concerned about the parking. I know it may meet the borough standards, but 21 dwellings are going to have 42 cars plus visitors, and you have 33 spaces. That only leads to parking on verges, parking all over the place, and making a total mess of it.
Just quickly, the 33 spaces there doesn't include the garages that are on site, which should actually the number right here. Do we know how many have been boosted by? 7. So it's 4, it'll go up to 40.
Yes, but as exampled by every other place in Wokingham, most likely people don't put cars in the garages. And anyway, but it's also nice the fact that since this place has had burning in the underground, they at least will keep their floors warm if nothing else.
Bob?
Yeah, probably not for a discussion really at this point in time, but I was going to mention the parking as well, because on the 33 for 21, it works out as 1.57 per dwelling, which part 0.57 of the car you put in.
It's mainly because of the parking down to the flats don't require a lot.
Yeah, My gut feeling is I don't like the density at all. I think it's far too high. I think the opportunity could be taken to make it a little better of a development. It seems to me as though it's cramming as much in as we possibly can get away with. How many garages did we say we had on site? So 21 dwellings.
On top of the 33, yeah.
Okay, so who gets the garages? Yes, who gets them?
Yep.
I think it's worth, one thing it's probably worth setting out that we're not approving the housing numbers or the parking.
That's what I said, it's probably not for discussion.
But it's obviously, they've shown a master plan, so obviously what we've done is we've just looked at the master plan. It's not stipulated whether or not they've set out which parking is going to be allocated or unallocated. There's an assumption in there that I think there is kind of an indication that parking for the flats is going to be unallocated. And we've always had that. That's probably one of the elements of the parking calculator, that when you have an unallocated provision, then obviously you do need a kind of a less of a level, because it's flexible parking that everyone in the flats can use. In this sense, there's 10 flats, as far as I'm correct, and 21 units, so it's kind of half and half. So that's the reason that's brought the parking down on this one. But we have got a condition on the application that any scheme coming forward will need to meet the parking standards set out by the councils. So if it's this one that comes forward, we'll need to obviously work on it. If there's improvements to be made, then we'll try to achieve them. But we don't know what's going to come forward. It's just an indicative of what's here.
Just before we go, just Mark, can you just elaborate?
I won't elaborate very much. I was going to suggest that if you look at the illustrative plan and then flip over the other side of the road to the authorised scheme, you've almost got a mirror image. So the issue about density and car parking, actually, if you look at what we've approved, it isn't that far off. And in terms, if you're actually looking at a number for density, the number across the larger site was a lot lower because there's a lot of strategic open space in there. And the reason there's a lot of strategic open space is because of the way the site was decontaminated. So it is a bit of a peculiar design to the whole site, but it kind of fits.
I'll take a long answer. No, I think I agree with what you both said and what Chris has said. I was just setting down a marker for the reserve matter stage.
Noted. Right, Tim?
Yeah, but by the way, it's already badly congested in the morning. I was just curious what the difference is between the car movements for the offices which are already there and for the proposed housing development. Hopefully you're going to give me some good news.
Yes, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I've been advised. Sorry, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I've been advised based on the floor area of the office, and the trip rates obviously are higher for an office, that there is marginal difference. If anything, the B1 office comes out slightly higher than the houses being put in. So I would have no issue in terms of, granted there is a tidal difference, you tend to have people coming to the offices rather than leaving. So there's a tidal difference, as I think the original application for Sanford Farm was initially sought. It was initially a business park with, I don't know if it was called, versus the housing which is now on site. So
they should be better then.
It can accommodate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris Barrett.
Thank you. I do think the 55 dwellings per hectare is rather misleading, and I wonder why we don't just, why the figure is not produced which indicates the number of dwellings not actually on the ground and disregards higher in flats, the ones that aren't on the ground. But then I assume we'd get more down to 34 dwellings per acre, which would be the same as Sanford Farm.
It's not 34 per acre yet.
2.5 times. The would-be airfield development is a different density. So what's the distance? That's just to the east, is it? What's the distance from the application site to the airfield?
A few hundred yards.
Yeah. Good.
That's the extent of Woodley Airfield there.
That's the hill, isn't it?
Yeah, from the edge of the
Okay, that's fine.
The old airfield.
Well, the airfield.
Yeah.
That's good.
Do you want to make another point, Chris? Or?
No.
Okay.
Thanks. My question's on the schooling. Now, Graham has said about the schooling being funded, but my question is on capacity. Now, I appreciate it's a very small increase of what's being added to the housing there, but my question is whether are we at capacity with the existing schools there? Is this the last straw that breaks the camel's back, or is there actually capacity there to accommodate the children from this site?
Well, just bear in mind we do make certain broad and agreed assumptions about children in flats. They don't normally contribute to that.
Yeah, certainly in terms of flats, there is an element that we wouldn't necessarily look for children to be in them. I would say it's not within the scope of this application to kind of place children in schools. It's something that is done in terms of separate from the planning application. So it's a little bit difficult to kind of say whether or not it's not something that we consider.
No, I think it's a small increment. I hate to do it on the basis of, well, it should be all right, but okay. I think that's what we say. Malcolm?
My question is mostly being covered. To be honest, not 100% up. On the indicative layout there, the entry to that block is presumably from that white road on the right-hand side going across it. Yes. Yeah, it goes across up there. To get to the houses on the left-hand side, is that sort of brown, shaded road, is that meant to be the one that's going across there? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the sort of internal side.
Internal side, yeah. And so the garages will be on the right-hand side there. The houses on the left, presumably they park in front of their houses, do they? Is that the idea?
Could you just point out, it may not be
Well, the people on the left would park.
Yeah, these ones.
On that road, where would they park?
Yeah. Well, again, this is an indicative master plan, so it's not one, but the intention I would take is that, yeah, I mean, obviously that one's got a driveway and a garage here.
Where they don't have a garage?
Sorry?
Where they don't have a garage.
Where they don't have a garage, then obviously we'd need to work through the next reserve matters as to how then we're going to sort out the unallocated.
Bear in mind, Malcolm, at this stage, there's just a requirement to demonstrate how it could be accommodated.
Most of my comments, as it always is, about widths of roads, just taking into account that if people are parking cars there, that the road really does have to be suitable so that people at the end aren't blocked by people further down that road.
I mean, this layout, you could imagine that that's the bit that might be adopted and that would stay private, so it would be for them to kind of maintain and manage.
As long as the road widths are suitable for parking without obstruction, that's the point I would always raise.
Yeah, we're ready for reserve matters to
Thank you.
John, want to come back?
Just one thing on the parking. You occasionally find that registered providers supply permits for people in the flats. That's pretty unfair for everybody else. And if we do have an issue around parking places, it would be a good idea to try and permit the whole site if possible.
Is that something we can influence at this stage? I think that's probably going to be down to the provider to determine.
Well,
you could start setting policy. I think it's probably something we could perhaps introduce as an informative at the RM stage, when we've got something we're working with. Well,
I know that the previous application was obviously Baxall to Hurst, but there's major issues with the contamination of that site, and I think they got it right in what they achieved. Can we ask the developer to use the process that they went through in order to achieve, I think it's Loddon Farm, isn't it? It's not Sanford Farm, Loddon Farm on this new development. I think all the questions that have been raised tonight about traffic and schools, as I understand it, Loddon Farm isn't complete yet and the school is up to capacity. I know there's not much we can do about it, but it will be a concern. And also, what you see at Loddon Farm compared to the airfield estate, if you were to drive around there, you just see that it's a mass of cars parking everywhere compared to what you've got on the airfield, which I would regard to as a very nice estate, and also the estate that's been built on the old Limpac site, of a great example of great development compared to what we've got at Loddon Farm, which is a mishmash of houses in all shapes and sizes and cars parked everywhere.
Was there, sorry Wayne, was there a question in there?
Well, the first one was about, I would come back on reserved matters around the actual development, but the point around contamination, because it is a major issue for people living in Woodley on the aerodrome.
Obviously, that was my first question, if you recall.